Hi, I'm Warren Sprouse. You're on the Bible Forum. We're here every Sunday night from 8 to 10 p.m. right here on this channel. We talk about life, we talk about God, we talk about the Bible, we talk about the world. We look at life through a biblical lens and we solve all the world's problems in 2 hours or less. Really? I can't tell you the number of people who write to me either on Facebook or email or on the Ustream feedback, any place you can get a feedback, Twitter, and they mock me because I think that I can solve all the world's problems in 2 hours or less. They think I'm being arrogant. And I think, how old are you? You don't understand the English language? You don't see the humor in that? It's not real? Come on. Anyway. I'm not talking to you people who you couldn't get that. You weren't going to get anything else that I'm talking about. We are here on November 15th, just 2 days ago. Paris, France erupted with dead bodies as a result of illegal immigrants that had become some kind of a fixture in the French population. This has been going on for a number of years, decades, mostly North Africans, in the beginning. And there was a time about 10 years ago or so when these young adults who had never assimilated into the system were running up and down the street firebombing the cars. And the French police were having an awful mess. And they found out they were doing this because they didn't have jobs. They were doing this in neighborhoods that were perhaps either upscale or what. These people had cars, but the firebombers didn't. And it was somehow the fault of these people who own cars. Does that make sense to you? And this went on for several months, and we learned a number of things. We learned that these folks snuck in boats across the Mediterranean. They landed on the shores of France. They were brought into the French population. They were given food. They were given clothing, medical care if that's what they needed. They were helped as much as any society could help people like that. And they found their way into enclaves of people who were just like they. And they did something very interesting, something we in America do not understand, or at least never did. They didn't assimilate. They isolated. They stayed in their own little 3 or 4 or 5 block area and became their own little country, as it were. Spoke their language, had their religion, had their values, had their ideals. They did everything they wanted to do. It came to a place where the French police wouldn't even go into that area. It was that dangerous. The founding fathers of these United States created a system. They believed that the system was biblical. They said so. They quoted from the Word of God periodically to demonstrate the continuity. But among the things that they did, they provided for assimilation. Give me your, what? Tired, you're poor, you're hungry, you're people yearning to be free. And for 200 years, people came from all over the world to be what? Americans. To assimilate in. They learned the language, at least the next generation did. They got jobs. They learned to live the way we live. It doesn't mean that there weren't enclaves that lived a little differently. I mean, every major city in the country's got a Chinatown, a little Italy, something where the Irish are, something where the Greeks are. I mean, they keep a modicum of their own culture, and God love them. But when it came to work, when it came to finance, when it came to education, American. They assimilated, and we became one. Somewhere around 1960, that stopped. I don't know if it had something to do with the Great Society, but I'm thinking it did. That suddenly there was one group that was so important that we had to support them in whatever they wanted to do. And they did not have to assimilate. They could be their own. They even tried to get their own language. They called it Ebonics. That didn't go anywhere. And I'm thinking that mentality spilled over into some of these other groups. And now as folks come, they don't integrate. They don't assimilate. And over in France, they have the same kind of an issue. Now, they're not America. It isn't that you go to these European countries and assimilate, but you did here. But now you add the whole Islamic horde. You know, back in the 10th to the 13th century, Islam was trying to conquer Europe. And they almost made it. Suleiman the Great. And you know, the Arabs, the Muslims, they point back to Suleiman. Oh, he was one of us. Look at all the... He wasn't Arab. He was something else. I don't know what he was, but he wasn't Arab. The Arabs don't make anything. They don't do anything. But Islam made the push. And oddly enough, it was a Frenchman who stopped them before they took over all of Europe. And here we are, 1,000 years later. They're doing it again. They're doing it a little differently this time, but they're doing it. And the people of this world, the people who are running the countries, the Western world, are so foolish, so blind, trying to be so fair. They don't get it. They don't get it. ABC News aired an interview where our own president downplayed ISIS' ability to wage war. In an interview with George Stephanopoulos on Thursday in Good Morning America, he asserted that ISIS was not gaining strength and that we've got them contained. When Stephanopoulos suggested that ISIS was gaining strength, the president pushed back. He says, I don't think they're gaining strength. From the start, he said, our goal has been first to contain, and we have contained them. They have not gained ground in Iraq and Syria. In the Syria, they'll come in and then they'll leave. But you don't see any of this systemic march by ISIL across the terrain. And by that he's saying that the Muslim issue, the Islamic issue, is under control because ISIS isn't popular and doing these wonderful things anymore. No, they have learned. And now we have 872,000 little pockets of this stuff. And we have British and French and Belgium and German and American citizens who leave and go over there and become part of this group. We have young ladies, young girls in our society who travel over to the Middle East in order to be raped by these people, to be used by these people. It is absolute insanity. Why is it that these people are operating this way? Why are otherwise intelligent human beings like our government leaders, why is it they do not see this? At the UN this past September, you know, when the Pope was here, our president spoke before the United Nations. He talked about a better job, more jobs and better government programs, and he talked about sustainable development and how all of that was going to thwart Islamic terrorism or violent extremism. He talked about creating opportunity and dignity, particularly for young people, as part of his effort to counter the violent extremism. Because terrorists exploit resentments among people who are impoverished and living hopeless lives, feeling humiliated by injustice and corruption. Who are those people in this country? He prescribed, quote, more democracy in terms of free speech and freedom of religion and rule of law and strong civil societies. And in the same vein, he instructed world leaders to build what he called diverse, tolerant, inclusive societies that reject anti-Muslim and anti-immigrant bigotry, things that spark division and fear and resentment. And according to his diagnosis, terrorism. That's where the terrorism comes from, folks. It's because people feel disenfranchised. They come into your country and you don't embrace them, and you don't embrace their culture, and you don't give them the same credibility that you give to others that are here and have lived here and have grown up here. You look at them different because they want to grab your little pet kitty and string them up and gut them for some religious ceremony, and you think that's terrible. The bottom line is we've got 10-year-olds running the world. Men and women who think in terms of fairness and justice. And you can't do that. Fairness is the enemy of justice. Fairness creates problems. People who operate on the premise that all men and women are good, and we just need to understand their plight and try to get along with them no matter what it takes. Help them succeed. You see, if you play nice with them, they'll play nice with you. Have none of these people gone to high school? You know people. You know of people in your own high school that were different from that, who were bullies. You couldn't play nice with them. You give them an inch, they'll take everything you own. Are there adults like that? Have you not heard of the mafia? I mean, that is an exaggeration of what the human spirit, the human heart, is all about. There are people in this world who want what they want, and they'll kill you to get it. There are people in this world, if you show weakness, they'll take more. There are people invading your country. They didn't come for a better life. They didn't come to become one of you. They're coming in order to take you down. Do you not get that? That's why I say 10-year-olds are running the... 10-year-olds don't get it. Unless they live in a city. But 15, 16, 18-year-olds who don't get it, they're victims. And here we are, 40, 50, 60, 70-year-old men and women. And either they are just stupid, or they've got another agenda. What's the significance of this event in Paris? One of the significances is that they weren't ready for it. They didn't expect the military precision by which 8 or 10 or 12 men were able to just wreak havoc. One of these guys had a bomb strapped to him. He had a ticket for the soccer match, and he went right through. Another one was stopped by a cop on the way to Belgium after this occurred at a checkpoint and was allowed to go through. Why does all of this work? Because our ignorance and our lethargy is the anarchist's primary weapon. It works because people tend to trust other people, even after those other people have said they want to kill us and have demonstrated a willingness to do so. We can't say, better watch out for that group over there, because they're like that group over there that just wreaked havoc. We can't judge these people by what their brothers, sisters, and cousins have done. And all of that's true. But it doesn't mean you turn a blind eye to the fact that they're over there. And you don't bend over backwards to make sure they're allowed to stay there, even though they didn't get here legally, even though they don't sign up for things, they don't get things in a legal manner, they're not working and helping and doing. The fact that they're just there and they're sucking blood out of you ought to tell you something. France has had this uneasy relationship with Muslims for decades. Men and women for over 30 years have never integrated into their society. People who demand, people who destroy, people who incite, people who do everything but become productive citizens, people who are having 5 and 10 children per family, and in 30, 40 years will dominate every society they're in. That's the new Islamic invasion. It's not ISIS, Mr. President. And it's happening right here. And it's happening because our leaders want it to happen. Will we wake up? Not likely. Why does Donald Trump have such a following? I don't think Donald Trump is the best candidate for President of the United States. I think he's a bully. I don't think he's got the morality of a slug. He'll do and say whatever it takes to make a buck. That's the impression he gives. But he's running high in the polls. And more Americans are saying, you know, he makes sense. Why? Because he's saying it like it is. He's telling you the way it's supposed to be. Build the wall. Stop people from coming in. Send back people you don't know and can't find in the database. You don't know who these people are. He's saying that. He's talking about a tax structure that aids the people who have a desire to build. You say, oh, it just makes the rich richer. Poor people don't hire anybody. I want all the rich people in the world to make more money. You don't have a lot of money, you don't know what it's like. But after you have accumulated enough that you can't possibly exhaust it, you and your family as far as you can see, what do you do with it? You have to invest it. You have to put it to work. You have to put it somewhere. It becomes, what do I do? And so you buy things. Or you invest in businesses or something of that nature. I mean, you just sort of sit your stockpile. No, they don't do that. And that stimulates the economy. And you know, in America, you can do that. Even today, you can do that. A 16, 17, 18-year-old kid with no high school education can do that in America. Well, it's not as easy as it used to be. Nothing's as easy as it used to be. But it can be done. Usually it comes with hard work. Usually immigrants come over here and take the first job that's offered to them. And it's not a good job, but then they do something with it. And then they see something else, and somebody notices their work ethic, and I lived for a long time in an area that was being invaded by folks from Mexico. Couldn't speak the language. What did they do? They usually went to work with for somebody who was from Mexico and had a business. But it didn't take very long before they had their own business. And they might be cutting grass, or cleaning houses, or digging footings for new houses, or whatever, roofs, or whatever it might be. Here in our neighborhood, we had a storm. We're in Charleston, South Carolina area. We just had a hurricane come through here, and you know, my roof leaked, not the roof itself, but you know, the vent on the top, at the peak, wind blew all up under there, and this, that, and the other. And you know, I called, and I saw guys all over my neighborhood replacing those things. They all didn't look like Americans. They didn't talk like me. They were all Hispanic. And the truck had their name on it. Only in America. And you can do that stuff. What is it about us and our leadership and the world leadership, all of Western Europe? What is it that they can't get it? They want to play nice. You can't play nice with a snake. Deal with it.